Recently, domestic violence has been hitting the media of late, so I thought it was timely to share what I was going to plan to share from my original testimony video, where I couldn't really unpack all those topics that have affects my life and now are the topic of my research today. In Queensland especially, funding allocated to domestic and family violence has been reduced by almost 40 million compared with the previous year's allocation. Now, I won't go into all the reasons around it, and I'm not going to be political about it at all. It is in the news, so it's a very timely time to share this, but I will share some stats that I have found around this, and around 1 in 4 Australian women have experienced physical or sexual violence by an intimate partner since the age of 15. I definitely fit into that category, and I know a lot of other women that do as well. And I just want to say that men, I'm not going to forget that men experience domestic violence as well. But that is not really the topic of today. Some of the stories that I'll share probably do involve men experiencing domestic violence. It can happen both sides, but there's a few different things that types of domestic violence that I want to go into as well, which really caught me off guard later in my life because I have been used to the really in-your-face, aggressive, overt aggression that comes along in domestic violence. So it wasn't very hidden. The men that did this to me were pretty well known for their aggressive and violent character. So it wasn't a hidden thing. Whereas the other kind of domestic violence I really want to talk about today is the covert domestic violence. And I know that's been hitting the media as well because it's getting more widely recognised because there's more emotional, psychological abuse and financial abuse that can fall under this category. And I even think can be more damaging in some respects compared to the domestic violence that I was used to and had experienced previously before I had experienced this covert kind of aggressive domestic violence that was quite hidden, very manipulative, very, gaslighting, things like that. But it really caught me off guard, but I will get into that later. And also another really important statistic that I want to share. So during 24 and 25, on average, one woman was killed by an intimate partner every 11 days in Australia. And I honestly can't believe that I'm not in one of those statistics. I feel like I've been very close to being in that statistic, and I'm very lucky that I'm still here today, especially with some of the experiences I had from my teenagers years and 20s, things like that. But anyway, so I just thought I'd start off sharing that. So I guess I'll just start with how I got into my first violence relationship. I guess I did experience some sexual kind of abuse before, like in my teenage years, but before I actually got into this relationship when I was 17, it was how old I was. I hadn't finished high school. I wasn't going that often anyway, but so why is this so hard to talk about? Anyway, maybe I don't have to go into it too much, but these relationships all started off by me being in a vulnerable situation, and they just ending up at the time at my most vulnerable point, offering to be the solution to all my problems and wanting to help, and just being really helpful and appearing to me. I was quite a naive teenager. I think I believed everything. Whatever someone said to me, I believed it. Whether that's autistic traits or just naivety, I don't know, but I took it at face value, and it just always got me into a lot of trouble. So the situation I was in when I fell into this relationship, which wasn't even supposed to really be a relationship, was, in my mind, it was more like a friendship. I thought he had been a friend of the families or my sisters for a little while. So I thought, and he'd known me since I was like 11. So I thought he was like, because of that history, I thought, he's definitely got my interest, my best interests at heart. So when I found myself homeless, my car was completely broken, cracked head, didn't have any money, things like that. Yeah, my sister offered to give him a call and assured me that he would be able to help me out. And we'll go into that story a little later, but I'm sure her intentions weren't that great regarding that in hindsight. Yeah, so anyway, he did. He said, I'll get my mate to fix your car. No worries. I know a mechanic, all that kind of stuff. And I was like, and he goes, yeah, you can just stay at my place. I'll give you somewhere to stay. I'll get you back on your feet, things like that. So I did. I went with him. And yeah, little did I know that those next few years would just pave the way for where my life went after that. Knowing it, I'd already taken drugs and stuff like that beforehand. It wasn't he who was introducing me to drugs, but he got me on stuff that I had never had by the end of that first night. And I found myself, I never saw the car again. We took it to his mechanics. And I was just always asking, is the car fixed yet? Is the car fixed yet? And it was never fixed. I just never saw it again. So that was the end of that, basically. But yeah, but it didn't take long. He's introducing me to all these different drugs that I'd never had before. I was young. I had nowhere to go. He kept saying the car was going to be fixed. And yeah, so it wasn't long until I was taking drugs every day. But that was a different story. I've already talked about my addiction. So let's just talk about the domestic violence that went on. I think a lot of fear and intimidation tactics, once they reel you in, once they know that they have you and you've got no support system, they isolate you slowly. And like I wasn't allowed to see friends, my family, not that I really had a good relationship with my family at that time either. But yeah, so just slowly but surely just pulling you away from everybody and any support system that you might have had. And then yeah, just financially, I had no money of my own. Obviously, he made me totally dependent on him. So that financial kind of abuse, what else am I going to do? And also, once they've got you in, I guess the threats and intimidation start. And I think the real fear-mongering kind of behaviour was what really got me, because he was in that scene, obviously, so it was more valid for me. So it wasn't just him I was dealing with. There was a whole pack of people that I probably would have had to deal with if I crossed him. So yeah, and then the threats to my family, death threats. He goes, if you ever leave, then I'll kill your family and brothers, sisters, friends. Just anything. And that's what really, really got me. I think it wasn't really mine, because my self-esteem and self-worth is so low after a while with people like that, that when they use those kind of threats, that actually worked, because I didn't want to be responsible for the damage that I knew that they were capable of doing to somebody else because of me. So those threats really, controlled me in a way that I wasn't able to get out. Sexual violence also was part of that story. Yeah. Just walking on eggshells. Yeah, I don't know. It's awful. It is awful. It just chips away at your self-esteem, your confidence. Yeah, just rips away at your soul the longer time goes on in those relationships. And it's fear that keeps you there, fear and not knowing how to get out. So I'm just going on a little bit here. That was the cause. Some instant, like, just to give you an idea, I think the worst thing that ever happened to me, one of the worst things is, I think I managed to get away from him for a little while, but I was that heavily drug addicted that I was homeless and doing all sorts of crazy things. I wasn't away from him that long, but to get back to him, because I had no one else, I didn't have any support system whatsoever. The second time I went back to him, like, the treatment got a lot worse because I was being punished for leaving in the first place, and the control got a lot worse. And probably the worst thing that happened to me is that he blindfolded me to take me to a place that I hadn't been before, a house. And if you want to live somewhere, then you've got to come to this place where you're not allowed to know where you are. You're not allowed to go out the front door. And I obeyed that, and I can't even tell you how long I was there, but I did not know what suburb I was in. I had no idea. I could hear a plane going over. So I had thought I had a good idea of what airport I was near, but I was totally wrong when I actually found out eventually. But that was really isolating, and I only saw him, obviously, at that time. I didn't have any contact with the outside world. I didn't even know if I was allowed to have a phone or anything at that time. But yeah, they're just some of the things that would happen. But yeah, I developed PTSD through that relationship, and obviously had complex PTSD throughout my life just because I tended to, when I eventually got away from that person, I had to move interstate. My friend's friend found out I was going through this, and the abuser took me for a quick holiday before he went overseas, and I was supposed to go straight back to where we were. And because I was seeing my friend knew what was going on, and she's like, this is a good opportunity for you to get out. And as terrified I was of the whole process, I was like, yeah, so let's do it. So while he was overseas, this friend of a friend drove me down to Adelaide, got all my stuff, and then drove me back to Queensland. So when he got back, I wasn't there. And that was another thing in itself, like when he got back and realised that I'd gone, the phone calls and the threats, oh my gosh, they just were nuts. And because I was affected by the trauma already, I believed everything he said, and I thought that he could find me, even though it was so unreasonable to everybody else. They're like, he's not going to be able to find you. But I slept in the lounge with a knife because I didn't want anybody else getting hurt because of this. And I look back at it now and I was so overreacting, but in my head, it was real. I just gave him, I thought he had so much power, more power than that he actually did. Yeah, he had conditions for me for letting me live. As he said, I had to give him back everything I owned while I was with him. So anything of value that I accumulated while I was with him, I had to give back. And that was the deal he eventually came to. So I had to send my car back, which I actually paid with my own money, but because I bought it while I was with him, I had to give it back. Not give it, yes, I had to send it back. So my friends didn't want me to. They're like, stuff him, but yeah, I was willing to do it. So I put the car on a truck and sent it back to him. So I did not have a car. And also I had a furniture set, like a bedroom set my uncle built for me out of wood, carved wood and stuff, which I had saved up for like a whole bit. And it was in my mum's house at the time, and he came and took that. Yeah, just no shame whatsoever. Just, yeah, he came to the house and he took it. So I didn't really own much. I was like 19 at this point. But yeah, he just made sure that he got everything that he knew that I accumulated. That was his kind of resolution. Anyway, as years go by, once you've been in one of those relationships, I was so broken. I look back on some photos and I can just see the self-esteem and just the emptiness inside because of that. Even like my posture and just how I felt about myself, it was really terrible. And I can recognize that now in other women that are going through the same thing or have just left the same thing, and it just breaks my heart because it's just such a soul-crushing thing to have to deal with, and to build yourself back up from that is just so difficult. But it's possible. I don't want to give people the wrong idea, but it is absolutely possible. I've had to do it several times myself. Yeah, because I was silly enough to get back into these relationships. I have had to build myself up and then come crashing down again after allowing a male like that back into my life. So that type of male entered my life about 2 or 3 more times. I had to learn the hard way in similar ways, but yeah, I just felt, yeah. But I think I was just more hard-headed every time that it happened. And I don't think the hits were as hard because I was so used to that behaviour. So I just expected it. And yeah, and I just learned how to numb myself throughout it. But I have been quite terrified. I ended up back with that original first guy back when I was 30. And that's another story in itself because I was coming back from Queensland after being in rehab and I need to go back to Adelaide and go to study or do something. And as life would have it, he found me. He found me, and I hadn't spoken to him for years, like 10 years, and he found me on Facebook or whatever, and he was telling me how much he changed and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, oh, I'm changed and trying to change and all this kind of thing. And that's silly. Like 10 years later at 30, from 19 years old to 30, you would have thought I would have learned these people say these things that don't actually mean them. But I actually let him pick me up from the airport. So this is after I got a rehab, and I was like, yeah, I want to change my life. I'm going back to Adelaide. he picked me up from the airport. He's like, yeah, I'm going to get you back on your feet because I know you've just lost your businesses and I'm going to help you start a business and all this kind of stuff. And he used the same tactics as he did the first time, but I'm going to help you. I'm going to help you. You deserve to get back on your feet. And as soon as he picked me up from the airport, he took me to whatever friend of his he had and who was doing the very thing that I had just tried to beat from rehab, because he knew that if I take her there, she'll get on it. And I did, and I couldn't help myself. He's like, oh, you want to give it a try or whatever? And I did, because I was doing this huge big move, and I was like, what? And then I was supposed to be going to move back into my mum's house, and I didn't. I ended up moving in with him, and I was like, how did this happen? So that was just crazy in itself. And yeah, I thought he'd changed, but it was just as bad as it was before, if not worse. And there was a few terrifying moments where I didn't think I was going to make it. And just also, and I think this is pretty recognised now in media and support services and in the literature as well, is that most people that survive these relationships, they don't stay quiet. And I swear that is the only reason why I'm still here, is because I actually told people what was happening. I'd at least have 2 or 3 people know exactly what I was going through, and made sure that my abuser knew that these people knew, and he wouldn't get away with killing me. There's just no way he'd get away with it. And sometimes in the moment, if I could get my phone, if I was in that interaction with him and I knew I was starting to get scared, I'm like, yeah, I'm in trouble here. I would, if I could get my phone, and thank God I have been able to those times, and ring somebody straight away and just say, this is happening. And the abuser, you think that they're going to lose it more, but I think I don't know, they've got fear in some respect. I think they do have fear when other people become involved. That scares them and that exposes them, and that is the only thing that kind of helps to get you out of those situations. So don't stay silent if you are, because the more people that know, the better it is. Oh, Jesus, it's getting full on. I don't usually talk about this kind of stuff. I'm over it. I'm over a lot of it, but it still brings up a lot of things. Just the fear, the memory of the fear. But what I do want to talk about is how these kind of relationships, I was very used to that kind of behaviour, and went back to uni, and I was building myself back up again after this second time round relationship that I got out of in a really bad intro. I was on the phone and I just was screaming, and my mum was yelling at him to let me go, and I got into my car and I never went back. And that's when I got on the right track again and just wasn't with anybody like that again. But this is where I got blindsided, what they call coercive abuse. I was not used to this because I'm so used to this really aggressive and behaviours like out there, and people know what kind of person these people are. The next relationship I was in, I look back on it now, very manipulative, very coercive abuse. Sent me to a mental institution, didn't it? It was the gaslighting, but I cannot believe, I look back on it now and I can't get over I didn't pick it up. It was, I don't know if I'm going to be able to finish this now. I'm going to pick up. I'm going to get this done. Yeah, this is still really fresh, so it's going to be a little bit harder to talk about, but it needs to come out. Yeah, so this one started when I was in my honours year. So 2018 was the year this one. And I'm really disappointed in myself. And I know I've grown a lot since then. But I had been single for so long, and I'd done so much work on myself. I'd done 4 years of uni after coming out of 2 rehabs, all those abusive relationships over those years. And I was like, I'm going to have a normal life soon. I'm going to finish my honours. I'm either going to go do my PhD or I'm going to get a job. I'm going to have a normal life finally. And so I was in my head, I was like, I'm 30, I don't know, I was 34 maybe. And in my head, I was like, I was running out of time. If I ever want to have a family, like the clock was ticking. And I was like, I need to find somebody, because in my head, I was like, I'm going to do my PhD if I can get in. And if I could just date someone for a little while. By the time halfway through or by the time I finished, maybe we could have kids, or that's what I wanted anyway. So that was in my head. So I feel I look back on that and just go, why were you so desperate? You should have just let things play out. But so I got on the dating app, Tinder, of course. And yeah, I started communicating with people thinking that's what I wanted long term, and I wanted to prepare for that because I thought this normal life was about to start. And yeah, so I met somebody. I seemed, I don't know, so I thought something, when I first saw him, I had this feeling that I never had felt before. And I thought that was, I don't know, I thought, yeah, this is the one, this is the guy. I look back on that now, though, and I just think that was God telling me that maybe that Harper was going to come out of this relationship, because it definitely wasn't him anymore. Yeah, so I'm grateful for that. But yeah, he was, I just didn't see it coming. He's very hard. The relationship started based on a lot of, I wouldn't say outright lies, but hidden things that should have been disclosed at the very start of the relationship. He painted a picture of himself and his life that was just so untrue, and he was in no position to be inviting somebody into his life the way it was, and then what happened to me as a result of him not disclosing the things that he should have, and then the way he behaved when all these things started to happen as well. Yeah, so first off, he made me believe that he was separated and had been for some time, and then there was a really amicable kind of relationship with his ex-wife. They still owned a business together. I don't think that was disclosed straight away. He said he had a business, but it wasn't, obviously when we kept dating, he had a lot to do with her, and obviously he said that they were amicable, still had a business, all that kind of stuff. And he was in his house. I had a couple of kids. I didn't meet the kids for a little while. I think it was like maybe a month, maybe. I can't remember. It's really blurry this time. It was just such a chaotic freaking relationship that it's just, yeah, those few years are just so full on. We didn't really get much of a honeymoon period, that's for sure, because when all the chaos started with his ex-wife, yeah. Anyway, but he didn't, there's a few red flags I should have noticed, just little things that would surprise me that would come up. Obviously, the wife, which he didn't take long for him to start really painting this really negative picture of her, that she was nuts, she's a psych. These were true and turned out to be true. But there's something funny I saw the other day. There was some show I was watching, and it was like, if you meet a guy and that says that their ex is a psycho, run. And not because of her, because obviously there's a reason for why she's turned psycho. Because I guess that much kind of abuse, this covert kind of abuse, can really damage someone's mental health, which I experienced myself while I was in this relationship. Yeah, so the negative painting picture, he was saying that how controlling she was, and I was really defensive about this because I had obviously been in so many relationships where they were controlling me through this kind of financial control and abuse, and apparently she had control of the business finances and all this kind of stuff, and she wouldn't, I don't know. But now I look back and I don't know how much of it was true. I don't know how much of it was exaggerated. But because I was so for him and I didn't want him to be experiencing this stuff, I was just like, no, you can't deal with this kind of control. It's not good. It's not good for you. It's not good for the boys, all that kind of stuff. So you need to do something about it. Anyway, eventually he did start going through the family court proceedings and all that kind of stuff, which was just an absolute nightmare. I don't know. I don't even want to talk about that right now because I just got such a bad negative view of that whole family court system. It's awful. So that'll be something else I might talk about on another day. But yeah, red flags. Okay, so little hidden things. I don't even know how separated they actually were when I got in the picture, because she was under the impression that home was hers. Yeah, I don't know. There was other little things. He didn't tell me he had a daughter that he hadn't seen since she was a kid, and she was like late teens or 19 or something like that. He didn't tell me about that until I don't know. I've got no concept of time, but I know it was months. It was like I was in that relationship full on by the time I found out these things, which was really hurtful towards me because obviously my dad left when I was a kid as well. And just that cycle repeating. You just end up with people that are like your father. And I think my father in some ways were a lot like the other abusive partners that I had as well. So that's another thing that can, yeah, might revisit another day. But yes, I found out he had a daughter. I found out he was still married to his ex-wife when he made it out that he wasn't. And he dismissed my concerns. I'm like, hang on a minute. And I really wanted to get married. That was a big thing for me, is getting married before we had kids. I wanted to do it all the right way. And he's like, it's just a piece of paper. It's just a piece of paper. What does it matter? What does it matter? So he'd always dismiss my concerns, make me feel like I was making a big deal out of everything. And then once I moved in, because my brother, I was living with my brother at the time, and they were about to have their second kids. It was getting to the point where, yeah, maybe it's a good time that I move out. And he was quite, yeah, we talked about it together. I've heard him say other things since then, which is just not true, that I forced my way out. I don't know how you force your way into someone's house, but no, he was like, yeah, that makes sense. Let's do it. Anyway, long story short, she started acting really psycho once I moved in, watched the family court stuff happened. But I never interacted with her one-on-one. I didn't want to. She reminded me like she was on the same drugs that I was on back when, yeah, before I'd got clean. I didn't want anything to do with that life anymore. She reminded me of me in some respects when I was really bad on the drugs in my early 20s, and that scared me. It scared me to see someone that reminded me of myself. And I was just such a different person. I just wanted nothing to do with her at all. And I didn't think I needed to. Like, why did I have to be involved in this dynamic? And my partner, obviously, he blamed me a lot for that. He's like, why didn't you just meet up with her? Why didn't you just... And I said, I didn't want to. I don't, because I know what people like that are like. It's destructive behavior. And maybe I still felt vulnerable. I don't know. I just knew inside, I just knew she was not good for me. Anyway, she did some horrific things. She tried to run us off the road head first, doing 80 kilometers. Cars went off the road. I got to finish this later.